The lunch rush had just ended at Melody's diner, and the place settled into that quiet lull between meals. The smell of coffee and fresh-baked pie hung in the air as the waitress wiped down the counter with practiced sweeps. Her name tag read Lily, and she'd been working at this diner for 3 years now. Most of the regulars knew her face, her smile, and the way she never forgot an order. "Can I get you a refill on that coffee, Mr. Chen?" Lily asked, already reaching for the pot. The elderly man nodded without looking up from his crossword puzzle. This was their routine, a small moment of connection in an otherwise ordinary day. What the customers of Melody's diner didn't know was that before Lily poured coffee and served comfort food, she had been heading down a completely different path in life. 6 years ago, she had been a piano student at the State Conservatory, her fingers dancing across ivory keys instead of balancing plates. Lily's love for music had started early. Growing up in a small apartment, her family couldn't afford many luxuries, but they had an old upright piano that her grandmother had left them. It was slightly out of tune with a few sticky keys, but to a 5-year-old Lily it might as well have been a grand piano on a concert stage. "More napkins at table 7, called out Miguel, one of the cooks, snapping Lily back to the present. She grabbed a stack and headed over, her comfortable shoes squeaking slightly on the checkered floor. Table 7 had a young couple with a toddler who was currently redecorating the table with mashed potatoes. Lily smiled as she handed the grateful parents the napkins. "Looks like you've got a future artist there," she joked, helping clean up some of the mess. "Or a future food critic," the mother replied with a tired laugh. As Lily cleaned around them, the diner's old radio played softly in the background. A piano concerto came on and her hands briefly paused in their work. For just a moment, her fingers twitched, muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice responding to the familiar melody. The bell above the door jingled, announcing new customers, and Lily tucked the memory away once more. After her shift ended at 4, Lily walked 3 blocks to her apartment building. It wasn't fancy, just a basic one-bedroom place with walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' arguments and TV shows. But the rent was reasonable, and it was close to work. Inside, she kicked off her shoes and massaged her tired feet. Waitressing meant being on your feet all day, something her former piano professors had never mentioned as a career hazard. She smiled at the thought. In the corner of her living room sat her most prized possession, a digital keyboard. It wasn't the same as a real piano, but it had weighted keys and with headphones plugged in, she could play at any hour without disturbing the neighbors. Lily ran her fingers over the keys without pressing down, feeling the smooth plastic beneath her fingertips. Then she sighed and walked away. Some days it hurt too much to play, to be reminded of what might have been. Her apartment walls told the story her customers never heard. A framed program from her first recital at age 8. A faded photo of teenage Lily at the regional piano competition, trophy in hand and grinning wildly. And tucked in a drawer she rarely opened, an acceptance letter to one of the country's top music schools, along with a scholarship that covered half the tuition. But half wasn't enough. Not when her dad lost his job that same year. Not when her mom's medical bills started piling up. The choice hadn't really felt like a choice at all. Family came first, so Lily deferred her admission, planning to save money and go the following year. 1 year turned into 2, and then life just seemed to keep happening. Her father found work in another state. Her mother's health improved, but the bills remained. And slowly, Lily's dream of returning to music school faded like sheet music left too long in the sun. After a quick shower to wash away the smell of fryer oil, Lily heated up some leftover pasta and scrolled through her phone. A notification popped up, a video from her old friend Zoe, who had graduated from music school and now played with a chamber orchestra in the city. In the video, Zoe was rehearsing with her group, her cello singing with a richness that made Lily's chest ache. She watched the whole thing twice before setting her phone down and staring at her keyboard again. This time she sat down on the bench and plugged in her headphones. Her fingers found the keys naturally, like coming home after a long journey. She played softly at first, working through simple warm-ups she still remembered, her muscle memory carrying her through scales and arpeggios. Then, almost without thinking, she began to play something more complex, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had mastered years ago. Her fingers stumbled in places they never used to, hitting wrong notes that made her wince. But she kept going, working through the piece from memory, feeling both the joy of playing and the rust of neglect. By the time she finished, tears had formed in the corners of her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, annoyed at herself for the reaction. It was just a hobby now, she reminded herself. Just something to do after work. It wasn't like she was ever going to play for anyone but herself again. The next morning, Lily arrived at the diner 15 minutes early, as she always did. She liked having time to settle in, to check the specials board, to prepare herself mentally for another day of orders and small talk and keeping track of who needed refills. "Morning." Lily greeted Kathy, the morning manager, as she counted out the register. "You're with diner section today. And just a heads up, we've got that big group coming in for lunch, the retirement party for that teacher from Lincoln Elementary." Lily nodded, tying her apron around her waist and making sure her order pad and pens were ready. "How many are they expecting?" "About 20. I've got the back section reserved for them. Oh, and they asked if we could do something special. Apparently this teacher loves music. They wanted to know if our usual piano player could do some special songs." At the mention of the piano, Lily's eyes automatically drifted to the small stage area in the corner of the diner. Melody's wasn't just a regular diner. It had originally been opened by a woman named Melody who loved music, and the tradition of live piano music during dinner hours had continued, even after she sold the place. Now, an older man named George came in 4 nights a week to play easy listening tunes and jazz standards. Customers loved it. It set the place apart from other diners in town. "I'm sure George would be happy to take some requests," Lily said, filling a coffee pot to prepare for the first wave of morning customers. "Actually, that's the thing," Kathy said, looking worried. "George just called in sick. Some kind of stomach bug. He won't be in today, which means no music for the retirement party." "That's too bad," Lily said, feeling a strange flutter in her stomach. "Maybe someone could make a playlist instead." Kathy sighed. "It's not the same, though, is it? The whole appeal is live music. Plus, this teacher is retiring after 30 years. I wanted it to be special." She shook her head. "Anyway, not much we can do about it now. Let's just make sure everything else goes perfectly." As the morning progressed and Lily took orders, refilled coffees and carried plates of pancakes and eggs, her mind kept drifting to the piano in the corner. It wasn't anything fancy, just an upright painted a glossy black, but it was well maintained and in tune. Sometimes during her breaks, Lily would watch George play, noticing how he interacted with the crowd, taking requests and making people smile. By lunchtime, the diner was bustling, and the retirement party arrived right on schedule. They were a cheerful group with balloons and a homemade banner that read, "Happy Retirement, Mrs. Wilson." The guest of honor was a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and bright eyes that crinkled when she smiled. As Lily took their drink orders, she overheard snippets of conversation. 30 years teaching music to elementary kids, can you imagine? Remember how she used to play piano for all the school assemblies? My son still plays because of her encouragement. She changed his life. Lily felt that flutter in her stomach again as she brought their drinks. The piano sat silent in the corner, and Mrs. Wilson kept glancing at it expectantly. During a moment at the service station, Kathy appeared beside Lily, looking stressed. "They keep asking about the music. Apparently they had specific songs they wanted played, pieces that were meaningful to Mrs. Wilson's career. I've tried explaining that our pianist is sick, but they're pretty disappointed." Lily bit her lip, her heart suddenly pounding. "I might be able to help," she said quietly, the words coming out before she could stop them. Kathy looked at her in surprise. "You play piano?" "I used to," Lily said, already regretting speaking up. "I mean, I was pretty good once. I haven't played seriously in years, but I might remember enough to play something simple for them." Kathy's face lit up. "Are you serious?" "Lily, that would be amazing." "Could you really do it?" "Just a song or two during their dessert would make such a difference." Lily hesitated, doubt washing over her. Her skills were rusty. She might embarrass herself. What if she froze up in front of everyone? But then she looked over at the retirement party, at the teacher who had spent 30 years bringing music into children's lives, and something inside her strengthened. "Let me finish serving their main course first," she said. "Then I'll take my break and play a little something. Nothing fancy, just a few simple tunes." Kathy squeezed her arm gratefully. "Thank you. I'll go tell them we have a surprise after all." As Lily carried plates of food to the retirement party, Her hands trembled slightly. After 3 years of keeping her musical past private, of being just the reliable waitress who remembered how everyone liked their eggs, she was about to sit down at that piano in her work uniform and play. The thought terrified her, but somehow it thrilled her too. "Enjoy your meal," she said to the table, managing a smile, "and save room for a special dessert surprise." Mrs. Wilson looked up at her curiously, but Lily just winked and walked away, her heart pounding like she was about to step on stage at Carnegie Hall instead of playing at a small-town diner on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Lily's hands shook as she served the last plate to the retirement party. The diner buzzed with the usual lunch chatter, silverware clinking against plates and the occasional burst of laughter. Nobody was paying attention to her, but she felt like everyone could somehow sense what she was about to do. "Is everything tasting good?" she asked the group, her voice a bit higher than normal. Mrs. Wilson, the retiring music teacher, smiled up at her.
"Wonderful, dear."
Kathy mentioned something about a surprise. "Yes, after you finish your main course," Lily said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I hope you'll enjoy it." As she walked back to the kitchen, Lily felt a moment of panic. What was she thinking? She hadn't performed in front of people in years. Her skills were rusty and her confidence was even rustier. She briefly considered telling Kathy she'd changed her mind, but the thought of disappointing the retirement party, especially a retiring music teacher, stopped her. In the back hallway near the staff lockers, Lily took a few deep breaths. She closed her eyes and mentally ran through the pieces she still remembered well enough to play. Chopin was probably too ambitious after so long, but there were simpler pieces she could manage, and maybe some popular songs that Mrs. Wilson might recognize. "You okay?" Miguel the cook asked, passing by with a box of supplies. "Just nervous," Lily admitted. "I'm going to play the piano for that retirement party." Miguel raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You play? How come you never mentioned that before?" Lily shrugged. "It's complicated, just something from my past." "Well, good luck," he said with an encouraging smile. "I'll make sure to listen from the kitchen." When she returned to the dining area, Lily noticed Kathy speaking quietly with the party organizer, a woman with bright red glasses who kept glancing over at the piano with excitement. The sight made Lily's stomach tighten. She busied herself clearing plates and checking on other tables until Kathy approached her. "They're ready whenever you are," Kathy said. "The organizer gave me a list of songs that were meaningful to Mrs. Wilson, but she said anything would be appreciated." She handed Lily a folded piece of paper. Lily scanned the list, recognizing most of the songs. Some were classical pieces she had played before. Others were popular songs from different decades. At the bottom, someone had scribbled, "Her favorite is Clair de Lune, Debussy," one of the first complex pieces Lily had mastered. Her heart beat faster. "I can do this," she said, more to herself than to Kathy. "Take your time," Kathy said, squeezing her shoulder. "And thank you." Lily walked to the piano as Kathy announced to the retirement party that they had a special musical tribute. All eyes turned to Lily and she felt her cheeks grow warm. The black and white keys seemed to stare back at her, challenging her after years of neglect. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it, buying herself a few seconds to calm her nerves. The diner had grown quieter as other customers noticed something was happening. Lily placed her fingers on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. She started with something simple, a gentle arrangement of What a Wonderful World that she used to play for relaxation. Her fingers felt stiff at first, not as fluid as they once were, but after the first few measures, something clicked into place. Muscle memory took over, and the music began to flow more naturally. As she played, she kept her eyes on the keys, too nervous to look at her audience. But she could feel the change in the atmosphere of the diner. The conversations had stopped, replaced by an attentive silence. When she finished the first song, there was a smattering of applause. Lily risked looking up and saw Mrs. Wilson watching her with bright, interested eyes. The retirement party seemed pleased, and even customers from other tables were turning in their seats to listen. Emboldened by this reception, Lily moved on to the next song, a Billy Joel piece that had more complex fingerwork. Her confidence grew as her fingers remembered patterns they had practiced thousands of times before. The music filled the diner, bouncing off the windows and wrapping around the booths. For the first time in years, Lily felt that familiar joy that came with creating something beautiful. By her third song, she was actually smiling, occasionally glancing up to see Mrs. Wilson nodding along with the melody. The retirement party was completely engaged, some wiping tears away, others swaying slightly to the music. Then Lily paused, considering her next move. She could stick with the simpler pieces and end on a safe note. Or she could try something more challenging. Claire de Lune, Mrs. Wilson's favorite. It had been years since she'd played it properly, and the delicate Debussy piece required both technical skill and emotional sensitivity. Something in Mrs. Wilson's expectant face made the decision for her. Lily repositioned her hands, took a deep breath, and began the gentle, flowing opening of Claire de Lune. The first few measures came back to her like greeting an old friend. Her fingers moved across the keys with growing confidence, finding the familiar patterns. The ethereal melody rose and fell, filling the diner with a sound so unlike its usual atmosphere that it seemed to transform the space entirely. When she reached the middle section, where the piece grew more complex, Lily felt her heart racing. This was where she might stumble, but instead of giving in to fear, she closed her eyes and let her fingers follow the music they remembered. There were a few small mistakes and a slightly wrong note here. A timing issue there, but she pushed through them, focusing on the emotion of the piece rather than technical perfection. As she played the final gentle notes, letting them hang in the air before fading to silence, Lily opened her eyes. The entire diner was still. Then someone started to clap, and suddenly everyone was applauding, not just the retirement party, but customers from every table, the kitchen staff who had emerged to listen, and Kathy, who was beaming with pride. Mrs. Wilson stood up, her eyes shining with tears, and approached the piano. "That was beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely beautiful. Who taught you to play like that?" Lily felt her own eyes growing moist. "I studied piano for years," she admitted. "I was at the conservatory before." She trailed off, not wanting to delve into her past struggles. "Before life happened?" Mrs. Wilson suggested gently. Lily nodded, surprised at how this stranger seemed to understand. "You have a remarkable gift," Mrs. Wilson continued. "Claire de Lune has always been special to me. I played it at my first recital as a student, and I taught it to my most promising pupils. Hearing you play it today..." She shook her head, seemingly at a loss for words. "Would you play something else?" Someone from the retirement party called out. Lily looked to Kathy, who nodded encouragingly. "Take all the time you need," she said. "This is better than anything I could have arranged." For the next 20 minutes, Lily played piece after piece, gaining confidence with each one. She moved from classical to jazz to popular songs, taking requests from both the retirement party and other customers. With each song, she felt more of her old skill returning, her fingers becoming more limber, her expression more natural. What surprised her most was how happy it made her. For years, she had avoided playing seriously because it reminded her of lost dreams. But now, sitting at this diner piano in her waitress uniform, she felt a pure joy that had nothing to do with conservatories or careers, just the simple pleasure of making music for people who appreciated it. When she finally finished with a lively rendition of Great Balls of Fire that had several customers dancing between tables, the applause was thunderous. Lily stood up, her face flushed with exertion and emotion, and gave a small embarrassed bow. As the excitement settled down and customers returned to their meals, Mrs. Wilson approached Lily again, this time with the woman in red glasses. "This is Diane," Mrs. Wilson introduced. "She runs the Community Arts Center downtown." "That was extraordinary," Diane said, extending her hand to Lily. "Especially considering you're out of practice. From what I gather." Lily shook her hand, still feeling the slight tremor of adrenaline. "Thank you. It's been a while." "The center has a beautiful grand piano that barely gets used," Diane continued. "We've been looking for someone to teach beginner classes on Saturday mornings. Nothing fancy, just introducing kids to music. Would that be something you might be interested in?" Lily blinked in surprise. "Teaching? I've never taught before." "You clearly have the skill," Diane said. "And sometimes the best teachers are those who understand the struggle. Think about it." She handed Lily a business card. "The pay isn't much, but it might be a way to reconnect with music on your own terms." As they walked back to their table, Lily stood holding the card, feeling like she'd stepped into someone else's life. An hour ago, she had been just a waitress with a secret past. Now people were looking at her differently, with respect, admiration, even a hint of awe. Kathy appeared at her side. "I had no idea you could play like that," she said. Why didn't you ever mention it? Lily tucked the business card into her apron pocket. I guess I didn't think it mattered anymore. Well, it clearly does, Kathy said firmly. And I've been thinking, what would you say to playing here sometimes? Not for free, of course. We'd pay you the same as we pay George. It doesn't have to be often, maybe just one night a week to start. What do you think? The offer caught Lily completely by surprise. Play regularly? Get paid for it? The idea was both terrifying and thrilling. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Kathy nodded. No pressure. But after what I just heard, it would be a crime not to have you play here again. She smiled and went back to work, leaving Lily standing by the piano, her thoughts swirling. For the rest of her shift, customers kept approaching Lily with compliments and questions. Where did she learn to play? Did she perform anywhere regularly? Would she be playing again soon? By the end of the day, Lily felt drained but strangely energized. As she untied her apron and prepared to leave, she noticed Mrs. Wilson's retirement party was also getting ready to go. The teacher approached her one last time. I wanted to thank you again, Mrs. Wilson said. You made this day very special for me. She hesitated, then added, May I offer some advice? From one musician to another? Lily nodded, curious. Don't wait too long to find your way back to music, Mrs. Wilson said, her eyes kind but serious. I've seen too many talented people let their gifts slip away because life got complicated. There's always a path back, even if it's not the one you originally imagined. With those words hanging in the air, Mrs. Wilson rejoined her friends and left the diner. Lily watched her go, feeling like something important had shifted inside her. On her walk home, the business card seemed to burn in her pocket. Possibilities she hadn't considered in years suddenly felt within reach. Not the grand career she had once dreamed of, perhaps, but something new. Something that could bring music back into her life in a meaningful way. When she reached her apartment and saw her keyboard sitting in the corner, Lily didn't hesitate. She walked straight to it, sat down and began to play, not with the fear and sadness that had haunted her practice for years, but with a new sense of purpose and possibility. A week had passed since Lily's impromptu performance at the diner, but people were still talking about it. Regular customers would ask when she'd play again, and a few had even left bigger tips with notes saying they hoped to hear her soon. Word had spread through the small town, creating a buzz that both thrilled and terrified her. So have you decided? Kathy asked as they prepared for the dinner rush. She was arranging menus while Lily filled salt and pepper shakers. About playing here regularly, I mean. Lily had been thinking about little else all week. Every night after work, she'd sit at her keyboard, practicing pieces she hadn't touched in years. Her fingers were getting faster, more precise. The muscle memory was coming back, bringing with it the joy she'd once felt when playing. I think I'd like to try, she said finally. Maybe just once a week to start? I'm pretty rusty, Kathy beamed. Didn't sound rusty to me. How about Thursday nights? George plays Monday, Tuesday, and weekends. Thursday would give people another night of music. Thursday nights. Lily let that sink in. She'd be a performer again in a small way. Okay, she agreed, feeling both nervous and excited. I'll do it. Great. Kathy clapped her hands together. We'll start advertising right away. Melody's Diner proudly presents Lily at the piano. How does that sound? The idea of her name on a sign made Lily's stomach flutter with anxiety, but she nodded anyway. Sounds good. She'd also called Diane from the Community Arts Center and agreed to visit on Saturday to discuss the beginner piano classes. 2 big steps back into the world of music in 1 week. It felt overwhelming but right somehow, like she was finally moving forward after being stuck in place for years. Thursday arrived faster than Lily expected. She'd requested to work the morning shift so she'd have time to go home, rest and prepare before her evening performance. But as she served breakfast to the regulars, her nerves made her clumsy. She spilled coffee twice and mixed up orders, something she rarely did. Don't worry, Miguel told her during a quick break. You'll be amazing tonight. You're coming? Lily asked, surprised. Wouldn't miss it, he grinned. Half the staff is coming. We want to support our secret piano star. The thought of her co-workers in the audience only added to her anxiety, but it was touching too. They'd been so supportive since discovering her talent, asking questions about her musical background and encouraging her to play again. At home that afternoon, Lily stood before her closet wondering what to wear. Her usual waitress uniform wouldn't be appropriate for performing, But she didn't want to look too formal either. She finally settled on a simple blue dress she hadn't worn in ages. It was modest but pretty, perfect for sitting at a piano in a family diner. As she practiced one last time on her keyboard, Lily couldn't help thinking about how strange life was. For years, she'd tried to forget her musical dreams, convinced that chapter of her life was closed. Now here she was preparing for a piano performance, and people were actually excited to hear her play. When she arrived back at Melody's diner that evening, Lily was shocked to see a small line forming outside. Kathy had put a chalkboard sign on the sidewalk. "Tonight, live piano music with Lily, 7 to 9 p.m. "Is this all for me?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she slipped through the door. Kathy nodded, looking pleased. Word spread fast. Mrs. Wilson's retirement party friends told their friends, plus our regulars and some folks who saw the sign. "We're going to have a full house." Lily's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. This wasn't just a casual performance for a retirement party anymore. People had come specifically to hear her play. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, panic rising in her chest. Kathy put a hand on her shoulder. "You can. Just like last week, but with more people who already want to like you. Play what makes you happy and they'll love it." At 6:45, Melody's diner was packed. Every table was full, and people were ordering dinner, their eyes occasionally drifting to the piano in the corner where Lily would soon perform. She spotted Miguel and a few other staff members sitting together at a table they'd reserved, giving her encouraging smiles. At 6:55, Lily went to the small employee bathroom to check her appearance one last time. Her reflection showed someone she barely recognized, hair neatly styled, cheeks flushed with nervous excitement, eyes bright with anticipation. She took a deep breath, straightened her dress, and headed for the piano. As she crossed the dining room, a few people noticed and nudged their companions. By the time she reached the piano and sat down, the diner had grown quieter, conversations tapering off as people turned to watch. Kathy stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, Melody's Diner is proud to present our very own Lily, who will be playing for us every Thursday night from now on. Please enjoy the music." There was a round of warm applause. Lily smiled nervously, adjusted the piano bench, and placed her fingers on the keys. This was it, her first official performance in years. She began with a gentle piece, something to ease both herself and the audience into the evening. As she played, she felt the familiar nervousness fade, replaced by concentration and then enjoyment as the music flowed from her fingers. She moved through her planned selections, some classical pieces, popular songs from different eras, and a few jazz standards she'd been practicing all week. Between songs, she'd glance up to see the audience's reaction. People were smiling, some swaying slightly to the music. Nobody was checking their phone or looking bored. They were actually listening to her. About halfway through her set, the front door opened and Mrs. Wilson walked in with Diane from the Community Arts Center. They found seats at the counter and waved when Lily noticed them. Seeing them there, supporting her, gave Lily a boost of confidence. For her next piece, she decided to try something more challenging. "This is Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major," she said into the small microphone Kathy had set up for her. It was the first time she'd spoken all evening, and her voice sounded strange in her own ears. "It's one of my favorites." The piece required more technical skill than anything she'd played so far. As she began the flowing, emotional melody, Lily closed her eyes, letting herself be carried away by the music. Her fingers found the complex patterns they'd practiced hundreds of times in her youth. The diner faded away, and it was just her and the piano, speaking to each other after a long separation. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began, louder and more enthusiastic than before. Lily opened her eyes to see people looking at her with expressions of wonder and admiration. A few were wiping away tears. Encouraged by this response, Lily played with more confidence and emotion for the rest of her set. By the time 9 o'clock approached, she felt like she was floating, high on the joy of playing and the warm response from the audience. For her final piece, she chose the song that had connected her with Mrs. Wilson, Claire de Lune. "This is dedicated to someone special in the audience tonight," she said into the microphone. "A teacher who reminded me that it's never too late to find your way back to what you love." Mrs. Wilson smiled broadly as Lily began to play the delicate, dreamy piece. This time Lily played it not with the hesitation of last week, but with confidence and deep feeling. Her fingers danced across the keys, bringing out all the nuances of the beautiful composition. As the final notes faded away, she looked up to see Mrs. Wilson dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. The applause was thunderous. People stood up from their tables, clapping enthusiastically. Lily rose from the piano bench and gave an awkward little bow, overwhelmed by the response. As the audience continued applauding, Kathy came forward with a small bouquet of flowers. "These are from all of us at Melodies," she said, handing them to Lily. "Thank you for sharing your gift." Lily accepted the flowers, her own eyes filling with tears. It wasn't Carnegie Hall, but in this moment, it felt just as meaningful. After most of the crowd had dispersed, Mrs. Wilson and Diane approached the piano where Lily was gathering her sheet music. "That was magnificent," Mrs. Wilson said warmly. "You played even better than last week." "Thanks for coming," Lily said, genuinely touched. "It meant a lot to see you here." "I wouldn't have missed it," Mrs. Wilson replied. "And I'm not the only one who was impressed." Diane nodded enthusiastically. "After what I just heard, I'm even more excited about you teaching at the center. But there's something else I wanted to discuss with you." She hesitated, then continued. "We're hosting a charity concert next month to raise money for music programs in local schools. We were going to hire a professional pianist from the city, but after tonight, I'm wondering if you might be interested instead." Lily stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to perform? At a real concert?" "A solo set of about 20 minutes, Diane confirmed. "The audience would be larger than tonight, maybe 300 people, and it's a bit more formal. But based on what I just heard, you're more than capable. A real concert." The thought both thrilled and terrified Lily. 300 people was a far cry from the cozy atmosphere of the diner. I don't know," she stammered. "That's a big step." "Think about it," Diane encouraged. "You don't have to decide right now, but you have a special talent, Lily. It deserves to be shared." As they left, Lily sat back down at the piano, lightly touching the keys without pressing them. 300 people, a charity concert, teaching classes, weekly performances at the diner. A month ago, none of this had seemed possible. She'd been just a waitress with a past she tried to forget. Miguel approached carrying a slice of pie. "Thought you might be hungry after all that playing," he said, setting it down on top of the piano. "You were incredible, by the way. I had no idea you could play like that." Lily smiled, suddenly realizing she was indeed hungry. "Thanks, I'm still getting used to performing again." "Well, get used to it," he grinned. "People were asking Kathy if you have a CD they could buy." Lily laughed at that, but part of her wondered. Could she record something someday? Was that another possibility reopening? As she ate her pie and chatted with Miguel and the remaining staff members, Lily felt a warm glow of satisfaction. Tonight had been more than just a performance. It had been a confirmation that her talent was still there, waiting to be reclaimed. The path ahead wasn't clear yet, and she didn't know if she'd have the courage to accept Diane's concert offer. But for the first time in years, Lily felt like she was moving forward rather than standing still. Music was back in her life, and somehow, she knew it was here to stay. 3 weeks had passed since Lily's first official performance at Melody's Diner, and her life had transformed in ways she never expected. Her Thursday night performances had become a local highlight, with the diner consistently packed and people even calling ahead to reserve tables. Kathy had started printing small programs listing the pieces Lily would play, and customers often requested their favorites. But despite this success, Lily still hadn't given Diane an answer about the charity concert. The thought of performing in a proper venue, on a real grand piano for hundreds of people, made her stomach twist with anxiety. It was one thing to play in the friendly, familiar environment of the diner where people were eating and chatting. A concert hall was different. All those eyes focused solely on her. All those ears critically listening to every note. "You should do it," Miguel said, as they shared lunch during their break at the diner. "You're more than good enough." "It's not about being good enough," Lily replied, pushing her salad around with her fork. "It's about, I don't know, pressure, I guess. What if I freeze up? What if I make a huge mistake? Then you'll keep playing and most people won't even notice," he shrugged. "Besides, when was the last time you heard a perfect performance? Even professional musicians make mistakes." Lily had to admit he had a point. Her performances at the diner hadn't been flawless, but people seemed to enjoy them regardless. and she'd started teaching Saturday morning beginner classes at the Community Arts Center, where she found herself telling her young students the same thing. Mistakes are part of learning. The concert is in 10 days, she said. Even if I say yes, is that enough time to prepare? Miguel gave her a look. You've been practicing every day after work. I've heard you mention the pieces you're working on. Sounds to me like you're already preparing whether you've decided or not. He was right about that too. Ever since Diane's offer, Lily had been practicing more intensely, challenging herself with difficult pieces she might include in a concert program. Deep down, part of her wanted this opportunity, even as another part was terrified by it. That evening after her shift, instead of going straight home, Lily walked to the Community Arts Center. The building was quiet, with most classes finished for the day. She found Diane in her office, sorting through paperwork. Lily, Diane looked up in surprise. I wasn't expecting you today. I've been thinking about the concert, Lily said, sitting down in the chair across from Diane's desk. I'm still nervous about it, but I'd like to do it. Diane's face lit up. That's wonderful. I was getting worried we'd need to find someone else, but I really wanted it to be you. Why me? Lily asked, genuinely curious. I'm just a diner waitress who plays piano on the side. Surely there are more qualified musicians you could ask. Because you have something special, Diane said simply. It's not just technical skill, though you have plenty of that. It's the way you connect with the music and with the audience. When you play, people feel something. That's rare, Lily. The compliment made Lily blush. Well, I hope I don't let you down. You won't, Diane assured her. She pulled out a folder and handed it to Lily. Here's some information about the event. Date, time, dress code, that sort of thing. We'll have a rehearsal the day before so you can get comfortable with the piano and the space. It's a beautiful Steinway grand, by the way. Lily's eyes widened. A Steinway. She'd played one exactly once during her audition for music school. The memory of that day, the nerve-wracking wait, the magnificent instrument, the panel of professors watching her, came rushing back. Is there a theme for the concert? Lily asked, trying to focus on practical matters rather than her growing anxiety. The overall event is called New Beginnings. Since it's raising money to start music programs in schools that don't have them, Diane explained. But for your set, you have creative freedom. Choose pieces that mean something to you, that tell your story. Her story, from promising student to diner waitress to whatever she was becoming now. The idea started to take shape in Lily's mind, a program that reflected her journey, from classical pieces she'd studied in her youth to more contemporary pieces that represented her current life. Over the next week, Lily lived and breathed music in a way she hadn't since her conservatory days. She worked her regular shifts at the diner, taught her Saturday morning class, and performed her Thursday night set, but every free moment was dedicated to practicing for the concert. Her neighbors must have been getting tired of hearing the same pieces over and over, but nobody complained. In fact, the elderly woman next door stopped Lily in the hallway to say how much she enjoyed hearing the music through the walls. It's like having my own private concert every day, the woman said kindly. Reminds me of when my late husband used to play. The day before the concert, Lily took a rare day off from the diner to attend the rehearsal at the venue. The Community Arts Center had rented the auditorium at the local high school. Not exactly Carnegie Hall, but far more formal than Melody's diner. Walking into the empty auditorium, Lily felt very small. Rows of seats stretched out before her, all facing the stage where a magnificent black grand piano waited. The sight of it made her heart beat faster. Go ahead, Diane encouraged, seeing Lily's hesitation. Try it out. We have the space for 2 hours. With trembling legs, Lily climbed the steps to the stage and approached the piano. She ran her fingers lightly over the glossy surface before sitting down on the bench. The keys felt different under her fingers, more responsive, more alive somehow. When she played the first few notes of a Chopin prelude, the sound that filled the auditorium was rich and resonant in a way her keyboard at home could never match. For the next 2 hours, Lily practiced her program, getting used to the piano and the acoustics of the space. By the end, she felt more confident. This instrument made her sound better than she was, its superior quality elevating her playing. As she was gathering her sheet music, a man entered the auditorium and approached the stage. He was middle-aged with salt and pepper hair and a thoughtful expression. You must be Lily, he said, extending his hand. I'm Professor Thomas from the Community College Music Department. Diane asked me to help with the sound setup for tomorrow. Lily shook his hand, surprised. Nice to meet you. I caught the end of your rehearsal, he said. That was Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, wasn't it? Beautifully played. Thank you, Lily replied, pleased that he'd recognized the piece. It's one of the more challenging ones in my program. May I ask where you studied? Professor Thomas inquired. Your technique suggests formal training. The question brought a familiar pang. I was at the State Conservatory for a year, but I had to leave before finishing my degree. He nodded, seeming to understand the unspoken reasons. Well, your talent certainly didn't leave you. Will you be playing regularly after this concert? Perhaps with the symphony or chamber groups? Lily hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know. Right now I'm focusing on just getting through tomorrow without falling apart. Professor Thomas smiled. Based on what I heard, you'll do more than just get through it. You'll shine. His confidence was reassuring, but as Lily left the rehearsal, doubts crept back in. What if she forgot the music? What if stage fright paralyzed her? What if people thought she wasn't good enough? That night, Lily barely slept. She mentally rehearsed her program over and over, imagining her fingers on the keys, hearing the music in her head. By morning, she was exhausted but too wired to rest. Her phone rang as she was having her second cup of coffee. It was Mrs. Wilson. I just called to wish you good luck tonight, the retired music teacher said warmly. Though I don't think you'll need luck. You'll be wonderful. I hope so, Lily said, her voice betraying her nervousness. I keep thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Let me tell you something I used to tell my students before their first recital, Mrs. Wilson said. The audience isn't there to judge you. They're there to experience something beautiful. All you have to do is share your gift with them. The simple wisdom of those words stayed with Lily as she prepared for the evening. She chose her outfit carefully, a deep blue dress that was elegant without being flashy. She wanted the focus to be on the music, not on her. When she arrived at the auditorium that evening, the parking lot was full. People streamed through the doors, dressed nicely and holding programs. Diane met her at the stage door, looking excited. We've sold out, she announced. 312 tickets. And wait till you see who's here. The mayor, the superintendent of schools, even a music critic from the city paper. This news did nothing to calm Lily's nerves. If anything, it made them worse. She hadn't expected important people to attend. Backstage, Lily paced in a small dressing room, trying to steady her breathing. She could hear the audience filing in, the murmur of hundreds of voices. This was so different from playing at the diner where people were eating and chatting and she was just background music. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Kathy, Miguel, and several other staff members from Melody's diner. We closed early to be here, Kathy explained, giving Lily a quick hug. Couldn't miss our star's big debut. Hardly a star, Lily said, but she was touched by their support. You are to us, Miguel grinned, handing her a small bouquet. These are from everyone at the diner. Break a leg out there. Their visit helped calm her nerves. These were the people who had seen her play when she was rusty and insecure, who had encouraged her to share her gift again. If she could play for them, she could play for anyone. When it was time, Lily followed a stagehand to the wings of the stage. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled. The master of ceremonies was introducing her, talking about her remarkable journey and rediscovered talent. And then it was time. Lily walked onto the stage, the spotlight finding her as applause filled the space. She approached the piano, adjusted the bench, and took a deep breath. 300 pairs of eyes watched her, waiting. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her, but then she remembered Mrs. Wilson's words. The audience was there to experience something beautiful. All she had to do was share her gift. Lily placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes of Bach's Prelude in C major filled the auditorium. Simple, pure, the beginning of her musical journey, and now the beginning of her concert. As she played, the nervousness fell away. There was only the music flowing through her fingers, filling the space with sound and emotion. She moved from Bach to Chopin to Debussy, each piece telling part of her story. The classically trained student, the years of silence, the rediscovery of joy. For her final piece, she chose Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, passionate, complex, challenging. As her fingers flew across the keys in the thunderous passages, she felt a kind of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. This was why she had loved playing, why she had wanted to make it her life. Not for applause or recognition, but for this feeling. This connection to something larger than herself. This ability to create something beautiful in the world. When the final chord resonated through the auditorium, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the audience erupted in applause, rising to their feet in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Lily stood and bowed, tears pricking at her eyes. This moment, this acceptance and appreciation of her music, was more than she had ever expected when she sat down at the diner piano 3 weeks ago. As she looked out at the sea of applauding people, Lily spotted familiar faces: Kathy and Miguel, Mrs. Wilson and Diane, her Saturday morning students with their parents, people who had been part of her journey back to music. And in that moment, standing on stage with the applause washing over her, Lily knew that regardless of what came next, whether she remained a waitress who played piano on the side or found a new path, entirely in music, she had reclaimed an essential part of herself that she had thought was lost forever. Lily woke up the morning after the concert feeling like she was floating. The memory of last night's standing ovation still rang in her ears. She had barely slept, too wound up from the adrenaline and excitement to rest properly. Her phone had been buzzing with messages from friends and coworkers, congratulating her and sharing photos and videos they'd taken. One message stood out, from Professor Thomas at the community college. "Brilliant performance last night. I'd like to discuss some opportunities with you. Coffee sometime this week?" Opportunities. The word made her heart skip. What kind of opportunities could he mean? When she arrived for her shift at Melody's Diner, she was greeted with cheers and applause from the kitchen staff. Miguel bowed dramatically as she walked in. "The maestro arrives," he announced, making Lily blush. "Stop it," she laughed, tying on her apron. "I'm still just a waitress." "A waitress who got a write-up in the city newspaper," Kathy said, holding up the morning edition. "Look." Sure enough, there was a small article in the arts section: "Hidden Talent Shines at Charity Concert." The music critic who had attended had written a glowing review, describing Lily's playing as emotionally resonant and technically impressive. The final line read, "One wonders where this remarkable talent has been hiding, and where she might go from here. Where she might go from here." That question followed Lily throughout her shift as she served coffee and took orders. Customers who had been at the concert recognized her and offered their congratulations. Some even asked for her autograph on their napkins, which felt ridiculous but touching. "You're a local celebrity now," one regular customer joked as she refilled his coffee. "Hardly," Lily replied with a smile. "Famous for one night maybe." But it wasn't just one night. Over the next week, the buzz around Lily's performance continued to grow. Someone had posted a video of her playing the Rachmaninoff piece online, and it had been shared hundreds of times. People she'd never met were coming to the diner on Thursday nights specifically to hear her play, and Kathy had started taking reservations because they couldn't fit everyone in. Lily met with Professor Thomas at a coffee shop near the community college. He was enthusiastic about her playing and got straight to the point. "Our piano instructor is retiring at the end of this semester," he explained. "It's a part-time position teaching intro classes and giving private lessons. After hearing you play and seeing how the audience responded to you, I think you'd be perfect for it." Lily nearly choked on her coffee. "Me teaching at the college level? But I never even finished my degree." "You have the skills," he said firmly, "and sometimes real-world experience is more valuable than a piece of paper. You've performed publicly, you're already teaching beginners at the community center, and you clearly understand both the technical and emotional aspects of music." "I don't know what to say," Lily admitted. "It's a big change from waiting tables." "You wouldn't have to stop working at the diner right away if you don't want to," he assured her. "The position starts next semester, which gives you 3 months to prepare. It's only 15 hours a week to begin with. Think about it." Lily did think about it, constantly. Teaching at the college would be a step back into the world she'd reluctantly left behind years ago. Not exactly the concert career she'd once dreamed of, but a way to make music central to her life again. Meanwhile, her classes at the Community Arts Center had doubled in size. Parents had heard about the piano waitress and wanted their children to learn from her. Diane had asked her to add an intermediate class and even an adult beginner group. "People are inspired by your story," Diane explained. They see someone who reconnected with their passion after years away, and it makes them think maybe they could do something similar. The idea that she might be inspiring others was strange to Lily. For so long, she'd seen herself as someone who had failed to achieve her dreams, who had settled for a different life. Now people were looking at her as a success story. 1 month after the charity concert, another opportunity arose. The director of the city's community symphony orchestra attended one of her Thursday performances at the diner and asked if she would consider being a guest soloist for their spring concert. They wanted her to play a movement from a piano concerto with the orchestra backing her. "I've never played with an orchestra before," Lily told him honestly. "I'm not sure I'm at that level." "You are," he insisted, "and we'd have months to rehearse. Think about it. This could be the start of something. The start of something." Those words echoed in Lily's mind as she walked home that night. For years she had thought of her music as something that had ended, a closed chapter. Now suddenly it was being described as a beginning. That weekend, Lily visited her parents for the first time in months. They lived an hour away, and her busy schedule of working, teaching, and practicing had made it hard to find time for the trip. As she drove, she realized she had news to share, big news that might change her future. Her parents had always been supportive of her music but practical about life's realities. When financial pressures had forced her to leave music school, they had been sad for her but relieved in a way too, worried about how she would make a living as a musician. "We saw the video," her mother said as soon as Lily walked in the door. "The one from the charity concert. You were magnificent, sweetheart." "Why didn't you tell us you were performing again?" her father asked, giving her a hug. "We would have been there." "It all happened so fast," Lily explained, "and I was nervous enough without having you two in the audience." Over dinner, she told them everything. The performances at the diner, the teaching job at the community center, Professor Thomas's offer at the community college, and now the invitation to play with the symphony. "It's like the universe is pulling me back to music," she said. After all these years of thinking that door was closed, her parents exchanged looks. "We've been saving something for you," her mother said after a pause. "Wait here." She left the room and returned with an envelope, which she handed to Lily. Inside was a check, a substantial one. "What is this?" Lily asked, confused. "When you had to leave music school, we started a fund," her father explained. "A little bit each month. We always hoped you might go back someday, but as the years passed, we weren't sure. Still, we kept saving. It's not enough for a full degree at a fancy conservatory," her mother added, "but it might help with classes at the community college, or private lessons with a good teacher, or even just give you some financial cushion to cut back hours at the diner while you pursue these new opportunities." Lily stared at the check, tears filling her eyes. They had believed in her all along, even when she had stopped believing in herself. 6 months later, Lily's life had transformed. She had reduced her hours at Melody's Diner to weekends only, though she still played piano there on Thursday nights, a tradition she couldn't bear to break. The rest of her time was divided between teaching beginning piano at the community college, giving private lessons at the art center, and practicing for her upcoming performance with the symphony. Professor Thomas had also encouraged her to enroll in music theory and composition courses, with an eye toward eventually completing her degree. "It's never too late," he'd told her, and Lily had discovered he was right. Her apartment now contained not just her old keyboard but a small upright piano she'd purchased with part of her parents' gift. The walls, once sparsely decorated, now held framed programs from her performances, photographs of her with her students, and a newspaper clipping of that first review. Lily still wasn't sure exactly where this journey would lead. She might never become a world-famous concert pianist, but she had found a way to make music the center of her life again. She was playing, teaching, learning, growing, and most importantly, she was happy. On a warm spring evening, Lily stood backstage at the city's Performing Arts Center, waiting to make her debut with the Community Symphony. She wore a formal black gown, another gift from her parents, and her hair was elegantly styled. Through the curtain, she could hear the orchestra tuning, the familiar cacophony that precedes beautiful music. 5 minutes? "Ms. Chen," the stage manager told her. Lily nodded, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. This was by far the biggest performance of her life, playing the first movement of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 23 with a full orchestra behind her. 6 months of intensive practice had led to this moment. In the audience were all the people who had been part of her journey, her parents in the front row, Kathy, Miguel, and the diner staff occupying an entire section, Mrs. Wilson and her former retirement party friends, Diane from the Arts Center, her students from both the center and the college, and Professor Thomas with several music faculty colleagues. Thinking of all those supportive faces helped calm Lily's nerves. This wasn't about being perfect or proving herself. It was about sharing her gift, just as Mrs. Wilson had told her before her first concert. "Places, please," the stage manager whispered. Lily walked onto the stage as the audience applauded. The spotlight found her as she crossed to the grand piano positioned at the front of the orchestra. She nodded to the conductor, sat down, and placed her fingers on the keys. As the orchestra began the introduction, Lily closed her eyes briefly, savoring the moment. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress who occasionally played piano. A year ago, she had been a waitress who never played at all. And now here she was, a soloist about to perform with a symphony orchestra. When her entrance came, Lily's fingers found the keys with confidence and grace. The melody soared above the orchestra, clear and beautiful. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about the past or the future, only the present, only the music flowing through her and out into the world. Later, after the standing ovation and backstage congratulations, after the celebratory dinner with friends and family, Lily returned to her apartment alone. It was past midnight, but she was too wired to sleep. She sat down at her piano and played softly, not wanting to disturb her neighbors. On the wall beside her piano hung a small framed photo of Melody's diner, taken the night of her first impromptu performance. It reminded her of where this new chapter had begun, with a retirement party, a silent piano, and a waitress who found the courage to play again. Lily's fingers moved gently over the keys, playing a simple melody she'd been working on herself, her first attempt at composition. The piece wasn't finished yet, but she was in no hurry. After all, this was just the beginning. As the final notes faded into the quiet apartment, Lily smiled to herself. Life had a funny way of coming full circle. She had once thought music was her past, but now she knew it was her future too. And whatever came next, whether teaching, performing, composing, or some combination of all three, she would face it with the same courage that had led her to sit down at that diner piano and play.